Making sure your UI is efficient while also making sure it updates in a timely manner can be the difference between your game feeling responsive versus feeling kind of laggy. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we can update our objectives inside of our UI in real time for our players without eating up our performance. So to get started with, we're going to need to do a couple things. The very first thing we're going to want to do is I've opened up the BP rifle. And what we're going to want to do is where we're adding the tag, we're going to want to drag this off and call it tag to add. The reason for this is there may be times when you don't want to add any tag, or there may be times when you want to add specific tags for objectives, depending on, like, for example, a specific weapon is picked up and such. So what I've gone ahead and done is I've done that for mine here, and I've added the tag here, but I need to actually go into our project settings and actually add the new tag because we're going to have two objectives, gun 1 and gun 2. So I'm going to go to gameplay tags here, and we're going to manage gameplay tags, and we'll go to quest objectives. So we have pickup weapon, and we're just going to duplicate it, and instead of calling it pickup weapon, we're going to call it pickup weapon 2. And we're going to add that new tag, and we can close all this. And then for the second one, let's go ahead and click here and just go ahead and select our pickup pickup weapon 2. So now we've got it with those set up. Let's actually go in. We're going to need to make sure we're editing our actual quest itself. So quest level 1, we'll go ahead and, so these are going to be our two objectives. So now we need to actually show off our UI. So we've got our unique objectives, but we've also got these objectives here. So we're going to want to make sure to add that here as well. Technically, we don't need to use this unique objectives if we want to reuse these. In fact, for now, we'll just simplify things. We'll just change the objectives themselves. So now we've got the two options here. Let's go ahead and compile and save. And what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to actually create a quest widget. So first I want to go in here, and we're going to have a few different things we're going to want to do here. So right now, when you add an objective, so when you start your quests, so at the very beginning, you're going to get your starting quests, go through the loop, add quest, and then basically check, do you have this completed, call quest added, so on and so forth. But what happens when objectives get completed? Well, right now we're going through here and we're basically checking, are they all completed? If so, then go ahead and call quest completed. But what we're going to want to do is go in here, and if they are not all completed, so basically we want to go branch, or I guess technically we want to do this no matter what, no matter how many are completed, you want to probably check mark. So let's actually go and think about this from, overview. We probably could just do it at the beginning. So we could say, hey, here's what has been completed. So we're going to trigger off our dispatcher here. So we're going to add a dispatcher, and we're going to call this objective completed. Because when you first add a quest, you're probably going to have, no objectives completed, or at least very few. So for now, we're going to go with the assumption that, there's going to be none. And we're going to call it here. And what we're going to want to do is actually pass in a little bit of information. We're going to want to tell our UI what has been completed and what hasn't been completed yet. So what we can do to make this a little easier on ourselves is we're going to take our tag containers here. We're going to take our active quest, and we're going to pass in a little bit of information. So let's actually delete this here. And we're going to do objective completed, and we're going to bind and then custom. So we're going to create a signature, and we're just going to call this objective event signature. And we're going to want to do a couple things here. So we're going to want to pass in some information to our actual objective. So if we're thinking about this, right, we're going to want to have the actual quest itself. So we'll say active quest. And this will just be, of course, of the quest type. And then would also be useful is the currently completed objectives, which is just a gameplay tag. So we'll go back here and we'll say objectives completed. And this will be a gameplay tag container. Now, of course, this is whenever objective is completed. We want to call this here. And then plug in our container and our active quest. But when we're first setting up our UI, we're going to need to know, what is actually part of our quest. So what we want to do is upon adding our quest here, we're currently calling quest added. So the useful thing is this will actually send to our UI, all of this information. So if we go ahead and hit break, we're going to have all of this information here. One thing we won't have is any possibly completed objectives related to this quest. Now in the current setup, we don't actually track any of that. You basically restart a quest if you've unadded it and re-added it. But just so that you're aware, if you're wanting to do a quest that is something you can move away from and come back to, one of the ways you could do that is, for example, you complete objectives. We talked about like not wiping that and keeping the objective information. You could do that there and then just only send the completed objectives related to this quest. But for now, we're not going to worry about that too much. We're sending the quest added information to our UI. And so with that, that should be most everything we need. Yeah, so that should have everything there. So let's go ahead and start working on the actual UI. So to do that, we're going to go back here, go to our widgets, and we're going to want to create a new Blueprint class. Now, of course, this is going to be on our HUD. So depending on how you want to do it, there's a few different things. We're just going to create our HUD from scratch and kind of show you best practices when it comes to your actual HUD. So what I like to do is Common UI has a few different options when it comes to widget setups and things like that. But for now, we will just worry about a most basic possible user widget. So we're going to grab this user widget here and call this W underscore HUD. And this is going to be a very simple one. We're going to add a canvas panel, just a single canvas panel, and boom, there we go. And we'll just call this our base panel. Now, we only want to add this on the HUD because canvas panels add expense. There are a lot of things they do, for example, anchoring, as well as Z ordering, and there's just a lot of different things canvas panels allow you to do, but you don't need that for every single widget. Unfortunately, a lot of tutorials show you and add this in every single widget. You really only need one at the most. There are rare instances where you might need a couple more, but usually those are the exception, not the rule. My rule is if there's more than one canvas panel on the screen, I'm probably doing something wrong. I like to have one single one on the HUD because it allows me to more easily lay out my UI. But otherwise, I don't like to have too many out there. So we've got that HUD widget. Now we're actually going to go in and create another widget here. We're going to call this it's another user widget. This is our W objectives. And let's go ahead and open this. And this one's going to be pretty simple. We're going to add a border here just because this will allow us to stylize it. We'll say, so they have the same padding, 8 all around. And we're just going to make this like slightly darker and with a little bit of transparency. And there we go. Something very, very simple. Now to actually add the text here, there's a couple of different things we're going to want to do. First, let's actually drag our objectives here into the HUD, because I like to be able to visualize it as we're working in it. We'll say it is 50 from the left and 50 from the top, and it's going to size to content. And that's good enough for now. So in here, you could, in theory, throw some text because, you know, you're going to want objectives to be there, but you're not going to always know how much or how many objectives any one single thing is going to have. So then the question is, well, how do you add an objective here? You know, let's say we want to have an objective for each. There's a couple things we can do. We could just create the class and add the text directly. What I like to do instead is we're going to create one more widget, and we're going to call this W underscore. We'll just call this objective because we have the objectives HUD pop up. This is a singular objective. And for this one, we're going to just keep it very simple. We're going to have a horizontal box. We're going to have within that horizontal box a checkbox. And then we're going to also have some text. And then what we'll do is we're going to grab these and we're just going to set them to middle alignment. And to make this look a little bit closer to what we're actually going to want, we'll say custom on screen, make it like 200 wide. And this will be similar-ish to what we're going to want to look at. And we'll make this one slightly bigger. Yeah, it's unchecked for now. See, you have checked, unchecked, and then undetermined. And of course you can add your own style to it. It's got a big old style section here. That's not really the thing we're going for here. So we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to leave it as the default. And then what we're going to do is I am going to go in here and I should be able to okay. Yeah, I'm not going to worry about that too much. I was going to scale it up slightly, but what we can do is we can just wrap it with something like a size box, I believe, and then add in a width and height override and set to like 64 by 64. Oh, sorry. I did that to the same one twice. And then if we set that to be fill there, and then 64 might be a little large because we basically want it to take up just a little bit more space than the actual size of it. In fact, we don't have to be like that. We can just do a center align there instead of a fill, in which case we don't really need the height override. But all right, so that gives us a little bit of padding between the checkbox and the text itself, which we're going to make a variable, and we're just going to call this objective text. And this checkbox, which is already a variable, we're going to call is complete. All right. Now there is some wrapping and stuff that we're going to want to worry about here in a little bit, but for now, let's jump into just getting this set up with some basic stuff. So, right, if we want to put in our objectives here, you know, we're going to want probably some kind of horizontal box, vertical box, not horizontal, some kind of vertical box. That way we can fill it. And for me, since this is something that we're probably going to want to have top aligned, but also center aligned, that way it's always, I mean, technically you could do left aligned. Top left is also a pretty common one. I like to do top center. It just depends on your UI itself and what you want to look like. Now let's go ahead and drag one of our objectives in here just to look at it as an example. And let's make this a custom on screen. We'll say that, let's say we make it 400 by 400 in the actual UI. That may not well be end up making it, but just for now. All right, so one thing we're going to want to do is we're going to have our text above our vertical box. So what we'll do is we'll actually wrap this with another vertical box. I know vertical box and vertical box. There's a couple different ways you could do this. Technically, you don't have to do it this exact same way. I just like doing this for ease of actual development. And then what we'll do is we're going to take our font and we're going to turn this up to something more readable at like, well, it's now 64, maybe 48. Yeah, so that's relatively readable. But you can see the text down below. Now that text is a little big. You want your objective text to be readable, but if it's too large, it ends up taking up a lot of space. So first we're going to set this to regular, and then let's scale this down by half to like 12. 12 is mostly still readable for most people at a distance. Now, of course, when you're doing this, one thing you want to be careful of is the colors you're using. Accessibility is extremely important. Depending on what software you're using, if you are using any to design your UI, you can do some testing to make sure that there's enough contrast between your text and the background. If the contrast is too low, people with eyesight issues will have a hard time reading your text and truly understanding what they're reading. If they either have some kind of color blindness or some kind of visual acuity problem, that can be a pretty big issue. One thing I'm also noticing here is there's not much padding going on here. So what we'll do is we'll go into, let's see here if I can add some in our, actually let's add some here. I think directly in our VBox we can add a little bit of padding, say like 8, yeah. So it gives us a little bit of padding, sort of, 8 might be a little much, let's do 4. All right, so you can see here, if we duplicate this a couple times, you'll see we have our objectives. Now we need to actually go in and add these dynamically when you get a quest added. So what we're going to do here is we're going to want to set up some listeners. So what we want to do is on construct, since it's going to be added to our UI, we're going to want to go ahead and grab our player and actually get component and get our quest. So let's go here, grab this, and we're going to go to our objectives. Now I believe we have in our quest tracker a listener. So we'll say add listener. And what we want to do is rather than adding for a specific gameplay tag to listen for, so, you know, we don't want it to go through here and do this for every single objective. We want to listen to the actual event itself. So what we should be able to do is go to bind event to, and then we got a couple options. We have our objectives completed and our quest added. So we're going to do quest added, and we're going to do bind to objective completed. Now what we want to do is these two events are going to give us a bit of data anytime that they trigger. So if we go to create event, the reason we want to do like this is so that way not everything is like all connected by pins here at the top. We can hit create event and actually create these events elsewhere. So we'll do create a matching event, and we'll call this quest added create a matching event, and we'll call this objective completed. Now what we want to do is go ahead and when a quest gets added, we want to add the actual objectives to the objectives VBox. So let's go back here to this vertical box. We're going to make this a variable, and we're going to call this objectives VBox. And we'll go back here. We're going to grab this. So when a quest gets added, we're going to first clear children in case there is any existing objectives here. And we're going to break this and grab our objectives. Now this is going to be a gameplay tag structure. So what we should be able to do is loop through these. I believe there is a, here we go. I knew it was something slightly different from what you'd expect. Okay, so it's break gameplay tag container, and this is going to give us all of our, let me hide unconnected pins. This is going to give us all of our objectives here. And so what we can do is then do a for loop for each of these gameplay tags. Now there's a couple things you can do to format the text. One thing we might, want to do is maybe create an array of objective names, so that way we can format these a little easier. In fact, I think that is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go back to our struct here, So for our objectives, right, we're going to have a gameplay tag for each. But gameplay tags by default don't really have, you know, necessarily clean names depending on how they're set up. Actually, I wonder if we can just test this out. Let's go ahead and see what it looks like. Because sometimes, depending on how you have your gameplay tags named, you can get away with just using their names directly. Sometimes you'll want to create an array of those names, depending on your environment, of course, and what you're doing. So let's actually just go ahead and we're going to hit create widget. And let's go ahead and select our objective. And one thing we want to do is to actually pass in the information here. We need to make sure that we have these set as not just variables, but also set that they're exposed. Now, it looks like, yeah. So because these are actual texts themselves rather than the data within these, you can't expose them directly. But what you can do is you can create a function to add the information here. Oops. Custom event. And we'll call this set up objective. And of course, you probably want one for editing it as well. For example, like the is complete. So by default, we can actually just delete this. So the is complete is going to be false by default, but if you wanted to be able to switch that here, you could just pass in a Boolean for whether or not that is complete or not. But for this one, we're going to just pass in text. We'll call this objective text actually. And we'll change this to a variable of type text. And then for this, we're just going to grab the objective test and set text. Make sure it's the one under widget. There is another one up here under content, but that one doesn't actually update it instantly when you call it like this. All right. So with that, we can then pull off here and hit set up objective. Now, of course, with it being a single thing, you probably could just drag off here, find the variable and everything. But I like to set up these functions like this because then if we add more stuff later to that function, I don't need to go in and then create it. It's already here existing. I just need to add the variables. So what we can do is we can get tag name. Now this is of fname type. So let's actually see how clean this looks when we actually start up, and hopefully, oh, sorry. It would help if I actually added my HUD to my player. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to call this objective text. Here are objectives. And then we're going to go ahead and add this to the player. All right. Go to our first person character. And on spawn, there we go. Before the quests and everything start, we're going to create widget. And this is going to be our HUD. And we're going to add to viewports. All right. And what this will do, this will create the widget. It will add it to the viewport for the player. And then we'll start the quest stuff. And the nice thing is by doing this first, it'll prevent the race condition of, hey, I'm looking for objectives, things to do. And then it already having the quest. This should hopefully at least prevent that. Sometimes if things take too long with it loading the widget, it could in theory not actually beat that. Because they go in sequential order, but startup time can affect that. But for our case, it shouldn't have any problem here. So let's go ahead back here and take a look. All right, so we got our objectives, right? So now we need to go to our objectives and actually make sure we are adding this here. So we got our quest added. Yeah. So you can see here, we're adding our quest, but it's not actually ever triggering despite us being our quest being added. Likely that is a race condition. So let's go ahead and go back here, and we should be able to just add like maybe a slight delay of like a frame. and that'll give it time for it to load the HUD and get everything bound. All right, so that is not. So let's go ahead and take a look and figure out why. Do a little troubleshooting. So if we go ahead and add a breakpoint here, we construct this. Let's go take a look. So we get here and we step through. We're going to bind here to our AC quest tracker. And we're saying, hey, when quest gets added, then we want to have event trigger, delay, and then, yeah. So that all looks good. Oh, we can actually remove that because we don't need that performance there. So let's go to start quest. So we're getting starting quests, add quest, going through call quest add. So this is getting called. So let's add a breakpoint just to double check that is getting called. Hit continue. Okay, yeah. And the in quest coming in, quest 1. This has our tags, has our objectives. And let's see here, gameplay tags, pick up weapon 2. So this all looks good. Sets our quest as active. All right. So as far as I can see, everything looks good, right? So everything should be ready to go. So then the question comes in, why is it not working? Well, let's go ahead and remove some breakpoints here and we'll take a look. All right, welcome back, y'all. So I did a bit of a dingus move here, and I can see the problem. So we've gone ahead and we've added, our objective and everything, but we actually haven't added it to our vertical box here. So what we want to do is after setting it up, then we want to go here and actually add that content to the vertical box, and that should fix that here. Yeah, as you can see here. And as you can see, our quest objectives look kind of trash. That's because, of course, they are giving the full name, but this should be a relatively straightforward issue to fix, because you see here with our gameplay tags, right? They have these names because that is a way for you to switch on these names. So let's go ahead and actually open up our struct here, and we just add a variable, and we're just going to call this objective titles, and we'll just make this of type text, and it's going to be an array since our objectives are a gameplay tag container, and then we'll move that up so it's right under objectives. So we'll hit save. Now we are going to have to recompile everywhere that we have that struct. That's why I don't like to touch structs very often. But sometimes they do need to be changed. Sometimes things need to happen. So we come here. So we got our objective titles, right? So we can go ahead and add. So we've got 2. So we'll say pick up gun 1. We'll add another one. Pick up gun 2. All right, and that will get us that quest there. So now if we go ahead and we go to our item here. So now we've added this. One thing we're going to do, for example, right, is actually use those titles. So what we can do is in the array index, we can get a copy based on the array index. Because, for example, if there's only a single objective, that would be technically 0 in the for each loop, because the way arrays work is they start at 0 and count up. So if it is array item 0, that would be the first one in the list, and you're selecting the first objective title, that would be array item 0. And we'll go through and add all of those. So these should look a lot better. Yep, pick up gun 1, pick up gun 2. Now what we want to do is whenever we have a objective completed, we need to actually, mark that the objective has been actually completed. So what we want to do is check which objective actually got completed, and actually compare that to make sure we're marking the correct objective. So the easiest way to do that is going to be, you can do a for each loop of the completed, and then basically compare which of these are completed and basically check mark those. So most performant way to do this, and I think that's going to be, so we're going to have a list of all of these, right? But that's going to be kind of expensive to compare these. So what might be better is to, for example, right, we're calling our quest added. We're basically going to want to do the quest added style function, but instead of just, going through all of these and adding them by default, we're then going to want to actually check and check mark any that have been actually completed. So basically we can copy this exact same function, and then we can even link this active quest here. But what we'll want to do is, let's move these down slightly so it's a little easier to read. What we're going to want to actually do is go, okay, do any of these match this? So we're going to have all of our objectives here, and then what we want to do is the setup objective, let's add the boolean of is complete. And then what we can do is, if it is complete, we'll just get this and then set check state. Either one should work. It's just two different ways to do the same thing. So you have checked, unchecked, and all of that. So we'll just do a branch of is complete is true. Then it's going to be checked. If is complete is false, then it should be unchecked. All right. Now that we've got that set, let's go back. We need to link it here. Let's go back to our objectives here. Now, what we want to do is this one, we can leave it unchecked since we're not storing whether or not objective is complete or not. Eventually, then once you are storing it, you can then bring that in here as part of that. But for now, what we want to do is basically get if the tag here is complete, it'll be in this storage container. So what we should be able to do is do find item, and then we're going to look for this tag. Basically, if it's -1, it's not found. And then what we can do here is what we want to do is to basically, is this equal to -1? If it is not complete. So we pass in a not boolean. So basically, if this ever returns -1, it'll return incomplete. If it returns anything other than -1, it'll return complete. All right. So that should be it for now. So if we hit this, all right, there we go. So now what we should be able to do is run over here. And as you can see, the check mark didn't yet update. So we go in here. What we want to do is go, okay, so we've got our objective. We're going here. We're adding the objective. All right. So as you can see here, we are clearing and then creating the widget, but it seems to be acting a little funny here. So let's go ahead and add a breakpoint because we want to make sure that everything is returning as expected. So if we go ahead here. All right, so right now, if we go forward, we have pickup weapon and pickup weapon 2, which, yeah, that's our objectives. And then down here, we currently don't have anything in our completed. So the question is, why is there nothing in our actual objectives completed? So let's go look at what happens when we actually trigger our objectives to be completed, right? Because we're binding it here, objective completed. So why is it not triggering? So if we come back here to our event graph, when the objective gets completed, we call objective completed and we're passing in the complete objectives. But it looks like what's happening is we're actually calling this before we've added it to our completed objectives. So we go ahead and move this down, because what we're going to do is we're going to check the objectives completed and actually give us the total and everything. Then we go back here. And we want to grab this. Technically, we could do it after this here, but I like doing it here at the end. Because what we probably want to do is do it right before it possibly could clear it out. And let's see here. And we could pass in this total and remaining. That's the thing you can do if you want to have a counter in the UI, is add an extra variable to this call of either the total or remaining, or you could calculate that inside of the widget itself. Either way works. But by moving this here, that should hopefully fix that issue. So now we should see those objectives get completed. So let's step forward and make sure that we are getting those. So see here, yeah. So as you can see, we've got the gameplay tag pickup weapon is completed. So right now we are getting this from here. Although I'm interestingly seeing it's saying we don't have, okay, now it is. Okay. It was saying we had 0, but I think that was more of an error here. Once we actually get to this, it's then showing. So let's hit continue and see. Yep, as you can see there, pickup gun 1 has now been checked. And if we pick up pickup gun 2, as you can see here, it doesn't seem to have actually updated. Aha. So here's the source of our problems. What's happening is we have that new tag, but we're not actually ever changing anything in terms of the actual notifying of the tag changed. Now, there's a couple things you could do here. You could just notify across the board and say, hey, this tag has been changed. But if you have something listening for a specific quest, the problem is then it's got to, every single time something changes or triggers, it's going to be listening to every single tag that goes, and that can get really expensive to have a lot of listeners. So this one is one of those things where you had just a little bit more difficulty on the development side, but it makes it a bit more performant on the game side. So we'll go ahead and go down here, and we're going to add our pickup weapon 2. And this is going to need a event dispatcher as well. So we will just duplicate this with pickup weapon 2. And then we'll call that here. We'll want to make sure we add the signature. And then do this, and then we'll take in the current tag and the tag changed. All right. We won't worry about remove listener. Add listener here we'll definitely want to do. This is pickup weapon 2, and then bind event. All right. And that should be everything because these are agnostic. We're not worried about the remove listener right now. All right. So we'll go ahead here, and now we should see that 2 works. And that triggers our cutscene there. As you can see, the current objective is completed. Now, there are a couple things we're going to want to do here as well, because, we've completed these objectives, but we probably want to give the objectives an actual title. So rather than saying, just objectives, why don't we just change this slightly? We'll say objective. We'll say this will be actually the quest title. So we'll just call this title. And then what we can do is when a quest gets added, is we're going to quest added, get the quest title or quest name, I think technically. And we're going to set this text here as a variable. We'll call this title. And by default, actually, we're going to have it be blank. That way, if you ever don't have a currently active quest, your title is just invisible. In fact, you probably want to set your whole objectives UI as hidden. But for now, we'll just set the text here. So once a quest gets added, we will give it its name. So when we start up, we'll see quest 1, and that's where we're picking up our gun. And we can even add our description and things like that. So if we go back to our objectives here, If you remember, we do have a description for our quest. We'll say description. And this one will probably have to make slightly smaller text, but first we'll grab descriptions. Now, things like, the images and things you can add to the objective screen. I usually don't recommend it just because that can start to clutter things up. But instead, what you can do is show that on your quest screen, things like that. And statuses and things like that are also more useful for things like a quest screen. But yeah, so now we've got our description. Let's go back actually and shrink the text for the description slightly. So instead of 48, we'll say make it something like 24. So it's still bigger than the quests themselves, but smaller than the actual title. Now, of course, this is just a sample one. Of course, you're going to want to actually stylize it in the way that your game's UI is, but all right. I think that's everything. That is event-driven UI, basically in a nutshell. If you have any questions or anything else you'd like to see as part of this quest system series, let me know. But otherwise, that's it for today. Good luck and good hunting.